This is Daniel Poppy, host of How to Write Good. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hello and welcome to Your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media. My name is Bryce Burge.
And I'm Ivan Sanchez Carrasco. Today we're going to talk about the NWSL playoffs. One semifinal done and one semifinal that should have been done. We're going to give our take on the Manchester United drama as well and talk a little U.S.-Mexico roundup.
Your Soccer Passport is sponsored by Squadcast. As podcasters that deal with analysts and guests from around the world, being able to record remotely is key. Current industry standards rely heavily on internet connection, but Squadcast changes that with a simple browser-based tool that requires no additional software to install. The audio is recorded locally as a high-quality WAV file, then uploaded to the host computer, allowing some solid audio quality. To get started with your remote podcasting recording experience, go to squadcast.fm for your 14-day free trial. NWSL second semifinal is tonight on broadcast day. That is between the Chicago Red Stars and the North Carolina Courage. That is the 1 seed in North Carolina and the 4 seed in Chicago. This game was originally slated for Sunday, but was moved out of North Carolina due to the hurricane and is now in Portland, where the final will be held. It's a rematch of last year's semifinal as well, where North Carolina won 1-0. Yvonne, with all the stuff going on with this game and all the things and all the drama, is there a chance for Chicago to come up and surprise North Carolina and grab this?
I think in a one-game playoff, there's always a chance for the underdog to pull an upset. But I think as the game goes on, and if Chicago's not able to surprise North Carolina early, North Carolina is just going to overwhelm them. Again, you're talking about a team that dominated the regular season, best goal differential, number one in the league in goals scored, number one in the league in goals allowed. If they're able to just calm down, let the game settle, they should be able to overwhelm Chicago, I think. And I think the fact's going to be in a neutral field in a controlled environment. Here in Portland, the weather's going to be pretty nice, not going to be anything crazy. That actually helps North Carolina instead of it being in a rain-soaked, crappy weather situation that could give Chicago a slight edge, kind of even out the playing field in a neutral field that is going to be Providence Park in a, turf field. Everything's going to be pretty controlled. I think North Carolina is still going to win 2-3-0.
Well, that's the thing, is that you described all the players and all the things that North Carolina does well, but I think you still are forgetting that Sam Kerr won the Golden Boot again this year. And that's something that Chicago brings in with her skill set. And you are moving to Portland, which may or may not be a crappy field based on just general stereotyping about rain in the Pacific Northwest. But you do have an all-star quality player in Kerr that can go out and do something well. And I don't want to sleep on her because she has the game-changing potential of any player in this league with the players that have surrounded her in Chicago. I think the big difference, though, is that Chicago has played just terribly once you've gotten past where they are. When you're on the other side of the Mississippi River, the team has won one game, and that was in April. And that is going to be a factor too, because now this game was going to be East. You could add some potential there. They had one game that did not go very well against North Carolina, but they drew in the other one earlier this year. So Chicago isn't necessarily completely left in unheard of territory to sneak a win. It's just that they don't play well out west. Even if they were going to win this game, they haven't done very well in Portland the last couple of years anyway, whether that's been against Portland or a neutral field scenario like this. So, you have that potential of just, is there enough? Is there going to be enough support for Kerr? Is there going to be enough counterattack to get the ball out quickly to her with trying to play the necessary defense against a team like North Carolina, and I just don't think that they'll be able to do it. I don't think it's going to be a shutout. I think they're going to be able to sneak a goal, but it could be a real nasty looking 4-1 type scenario in favor of North Carolina, and I think North Carolina is going to go back in and repeat last year's situation to a T, because now last year, the other game that happened in this scenario. This is Bryce Burge, Von Sanchez Carrasco on Your Soccer Passport, available on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And that's where you were at during the Portland Thorn and Seattle Reign game. The other semifinal, Portland was victorious 2-1 with Heath and Horan scoring the goals for Portland. This is where I'm just going to turn it over to you. What an experience to be at a game like that. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, great experience. Portland filled up the stadium for the most part. I think the final draw was 14,000, a little over 14,000. Really great atmosphere. Early in the game, took a little bit for the game to get settled, but once it did, the Thorn were kind of imposing their style of will a little bit. I mentioned before on the game started in the Instagram page that you have a team that second most goals scored in the Thorns against a team that's second least goals allowed in the Reign. So you had a contrast of styles, and which team would be able to put their style of play on that game was going to be important. The Thorns were able to continue what they did last week and be aggressive. They forced a double save from Williams early on. And then just when they kind of looked like they were going to get the goal, Emily Sonnet had a really clumsy tackle outside the box for the Thorns, and that allowed Seattle to score in the 27th minute from a Spencer goal. And then Seattle kind of took over the first half with Fishlock being the best player, kind of controlling the midfield, and then feeding Rapone on the left-hand side. And you thought Seattle was going to get into at halftime winning 1-0, and then in the 44th minute, they just broke it down, and Sinclair was kind of able to run through the middle and then find Tobin Heath on the left-hand side to tie it up right before halftime. And then that's when you felt the Thorns really had the game again, because Seattle came out lackluster in the second half. The Thorns were pushing again. They had that combination of Sinclair, Horan, and Toby Heath just really overwhelmed the Seattle defense. And then they had a goal disallowed in the 76th minute or 72nd minute from an offside that clearly was on replay. And then in the 78th, Sinclair found Horan off for a corner kick or off a set play, gameplay, and then a header goal. And Seattle really had nothing to combat that with. And the Portland just really overwhelmed them with their offense and just couldn't. And Seattle struggled to get the ball outside of their half, really, and really try to get anything together to try to tie it up.
With that game, again, all those videos, all that analysis, all of your postings are still on social media, so please go ahead and check those out. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Your Soccer Passport is how you can find that. With that now, does Portland... It's so odd because now that you have that change scenario, Portland can go and sit in there. We don't know how many people are going to show up from North Carolina or Chicago for this game. You have that amazing experience where you could almost have an empty stadium popping up, or you could have a whole bunch of Portland fans coming in there and doing Portland chants and just reminding both teams that this is their house. You know, you've got a completely weird scenario with this this neutral site game that's reminiscent to D2 basketball or D3 football or something like that. That is completely odd. And the thing is that we don't even get a chance to talk about the championship game in its entirety because of this game being moved. The championship is this Saturday. So I guess for Portland now, we kind of have to talk about matchups potential. So like first to talk about, let's say the Red Stars upset the Courage. What would Portland be looking for in this game and in their matchup against Chicago to bring home a title?
I think they have to, similar to what they did against Seattle, was just kind of overwhelm and try to suffocate the Chicago defense and do some high pressing that allows them to turn the ball over and then get it to their playmakers up top. And then for the other side, if North Carolina was to win and not get upset, that's when the home field advantage is really going to come into play, and where those 15,000 fans show up really come into play, and because they know the importance of it. And for them to pull off an upset against a North Carolina team who's been very dominant, if North Carolina was to win, it is going to take a perfect game where their defense can't make mistakes like they did against Seattle, where the crowd needs to really give them the push and that extra environment that comes with hosting a final, and take advantage of the moments with that attack of Sinclair, of Horan, and of Toby Heath.
And that's the great thing about the high press is that even though that you've got Kerr in the back, in that back third still for Portland, because Kerr's attacking for Chicago, you have so many things up top where you can still allow 1 or 2 goals and just make sure that you just outscore them. My question is will we see a high-scoring final? Because I do think it's going to be Portland and North Carolina. My question is how many goals are going to be scored? Because the over-under on this thing has got to be one of the highest finals in soccer that's ever been. There's a real possibility that this thing could be 4-4, 5-5 going into extra time anyway. Do you think it's going to go more that route, or do you think it's going to be more of a defensive game because of North Carolina's ability in that second game and Portland trying to respond?
I think usually finals are played a little more timid and a little more contained, but like you said, these two teams do go after each other. I can see the over and under being about 4.5 goals, so like a 4-2 win or 4-2 win, 3-2, 3-2 with just a lot of goals scored. I will say this: the Timber Keeper played really well on Saturday as well, and so keepers can make a difference as well. Where a game that is very attacking minded can be more neutralized with a strong goalkeeper performance. And the thing is, in games like these, once a goalkeeper makes a couple early saves, it really calms the rest of the defense down, and it kind of helps them settle. And then that's where the game can kind of start lulling, and instead of getting into a massive shootout, that's where things kind of slow down and it becomes more of a chess match and those kind of things. So watch, depending how good the goalkeepers are in the final, can really dictate whether it's going to be a really high scoring game, or a really flowing shootout.
All right, because we won't have an opportunity to say so before the championship happens. First of all, just to double check, will you be attending either of these games?
I won't Tuesday. I will Saturday.
Okay. Awesome. So that way we will still have that on there. You'll have that ability to give some extra stuff, and we will not do a prediction on the championship game. We may do some extra social media updates and do kind of a game preview at that time on social media. Again, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Your Soccer Passport. The Red Stars Encouraged is tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific. That game was moved from ESPN2. Now it is on ESPN News due to the change. The title game is Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 Pacific, and that will be on Lifetime. Up next, there's drama in Manchester. We will bring you up to date on all of that here on Your Soccer Passport.
I hear the freaks come out. They don't stop dancing till the sunlight hits their eyes. I hear the freaks come
Welcome back to Your Soccer Passport. We are on social media and would like to hear from you. Don't be afraid to interact with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter with any topics that you would like to hear. This week, in this second segment, we are going to be talking about the Manchester United drama as that continues, despite the 2-game winning streak that has pushed Manchester United back up the table a bit. Man U currently sits in 8th, but nobody has time to talk about that, as everybody wants to talk about the drama off the field. Mourinho versus Pogba, fans versus players, players versus the press. These off-the-field battles are just as good as the ones on the pitch. What do you make of the situation as a whole, Yvonne?
I kind of see, it sounds like a broken record to me. This is Mourinho's 3rd time in a row with a 3rd different team that he's kind of had drama in the 3rd season. It happened with Real Madrid, and they did not leave on good terms. It happened at Chelsea, did not leave on good terms. And now it's happening again with United. And with me, it kind of just seems like the this Gran Torino get off my lawn kind of situation with Mourinho. He used to be 15 years ago this maverick, this cavalier who was able to rally his teams around him, and it'd be them against the world, and he would be able to get the best out of them. And now it kind of seems that he's lost touch with that a little bit, and that's no more than probably the most important player for United, which is Pogba, and there's a disconnect between those two. And I just don't think that Mourinho has the power anymore to, if there is a problem between Mourinho and Pogba, I think United probably goes and chooses to get rid of Mourinho instead of Pogba, to keep Pogba and keep him happy instead of Mourinho. And I think that's kind of shows where world football is a little bit, and where United is, and where Mourinho is, where he just doesn't have that power anymore that he used to.
And that's a big factor, too, because you're starting to see the difference between players and coaching staff be more prevalent in sports. You see that in the NBA often, all the time. You've seen it in some smaller leagues like Australian baseball. There was a big issue this Sunday with Vontae Davis just walking off the field during halftime and retiring for the Buffalo Bills. So, like, players being able to be more vocal about their coaching situations is impacting all of sports all across the world, now popping up in the EPL with Pogba. I think the difference is that it's not just Pogba. Earlier today on Monday, they were talking about how Eric Bailey wants to be potentially out of Man U as well, but that's based on his playing role. There's multiple players. Matic has been backing up Mourinho because the manager has been taking a lot of the drama onto himself instead of having it be on the players for bad performance. So I see drama, I see conflict, but I don't see enough for the Manchester United board to say, let's pick a side yet. You know, Pogba is young. Pogba comes from the French national team, which, yes, has won a World Cup, but as discussed multiple times in the World Cup edition of this show, that France, when they explode, they implode on themselves so dramatically and so harshly that there are problems. And what we could have saw in the World Cup with Pogba is just happening now in his club team. That maybe it's not a get off my lawn scenario. Maybe it's actually legitimate gripes against these young whippersnappers. And that's a whole nother scenario on top of it, because Mourinho is not worried about getting canned yet because it is so expensive in his third year. Yes, there is a trend. I think that everything that you brought up is legitimate in terms of his past teams. But the difference is that there's a big buyout clause now for him with Man U. If you get Man U in, or if Man U decides to bring in somebody else, like Zidane, which has been brought up, and says that he wants to bring in certain players, you're not going to have the cash for both. Like, I know Man U is one of the biggest and most expensive teams in the world, but there's a lot of cash you got to start be talking about, and I'm not sure if that's the big thing. It's just a matter of what shows up now that could be a big factor.
Yeah, but United's one of those teams where money is not an issue. So if they want to get rid of Mourinho, they'll find a way to get rid of Mourinho. And you're talking about Zidane as potential replacement. You're talking about a Champions League winner, which is where United want to return to. You're talking about a Frenchman who Pogba respects and loves, and they're trying to find a way to tap and get the Pogba of France, because Pogba was spectacular for France in the World Cup, and he seemed to be a leader in the locker room as well for France. And how can United tap into that? That's the thing. That's the biggest question. Is Mourinho getting the best out of him to tap that aspect out of him, or is he hindering him in a way? Because it seems like he's hindering him in a way in those regards of becoming of being that leader. And sometimes he gives him some of it, some leadership, like when he captained United the first week of the season, and then sometimes he seems to take it away, something Mourinho kind of likes to do with his players, kind of challenge them in those regards.
You have that, but at the exact same time, that challenge isn't just for Pogba. There's more players on that roster that are just as good, if not better, for Pogba. And that's the issue. Is like, yes, you want him to be there, you want him to play well, But Man U, again, this happens a lot with teams that money is not an issue, is that you have players that are not happy. And there's more than just one player on this roster. It is a team sport. And I don't think Pogba is worth it. Maybe 2 years when he's more mature, I would say, yes, you got to back Pogba in every single way. One good World Cup showing and some complementary roles in other successful teams is not worth it all for Man U to throw away Mourinho. And, that being said, you've got some big games coming up because you get the full spectrum of potential English soccer, because you got Champions League on Wednesday against Young Boys. Your next matchup is against the Wolves, who have been the promoted darling of the year in terms of how good that they've responded by moving up in the EPL. Then after that, on next Tuesday, Man U's playing Derby County in the Football League Cup, and then it's back to West Ham in EPL, and then it's back to Champions League against Valencia. There's this big random grouping of truly different leagues, truly different styles of soccer, that if you want to bring in somebody new, good luck. You're not going to be able to bring in a manager that quick during that stretch of time and be able to hold a respectable aspect in that scenario. And I think that may keep him. This is going to be, I don't want to say it's the last stand for Mourinho, but if he does not do well up until the Juventus game on October 23rd, he'll be gone by then. But these next 5 games, I think, will be the difference between who stays and who goes, because I think Pogba is going to be the one that goes, and he'll be gone by January.
Well, see, the thing is something you said earlier that maybe in 2 years you back Pogba all the way. United have been struggling since Ferguson left to get back to that world quality level of soccer, the Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Real Madrids of the world. The last thing you want to do is let Pogba go now at 25, and then in 2 years he is this world-class top 2-3 player, the way Hazard has kind of become for Chelsea, the way you see these gems that you need to be where United want to be. And then in 2 years or in a year, you fire Mourinho anyways, because he still won't change and he's not getting the results they need. But with that said, United does have a nice little stretch here where they can pick up some more points in the EPL. The Champions League is going to be a new challenge for Mourinho to reestablish himself in the European stage. They can't crash out. If they crash out in the group stage of the Champions League, that's enough for him to be gone, because United need to be playing knockout Champions League stage to return to the level that they want to in that glory stage. But yeah, I think it's too much of a risk to let Pogba go, and then he comes out and he's the player everybody thought he was a couple of years ago when he was on FIFA's All-11 starting lineup, when he was the only non-Real Madrid Barcelona player back when he was Juventus. You can't run that risk, I think, if you're United.
Champions League is next for Man U. They play Young Boys on Wednesday. Next EPL matchup is Saturday against the Wanderers of Wolverhampton. Worldwide Headlines is next. After that, a heated exchange regarding short jokes and the soccer game around it here on Your Soccer Passport. Time now for Worldwide Headlines here on Your Soccer Passport, a segment touching on some of the other big news from around the soccer world. Zlatan Ibrahimovic has scored his 500th career goal. The Swedish striker used a Chuck Norris-style roundhouse volley from Jonathan Dos Santos to net the goal for his 17th of the season. His side, LA Galaxy, though, lost the game 5-3, but Ibrahimovic said after the game that he, quote, was happy for Toronto because they'll be remembered as his 500th victim. A U.S. entity is quickly becoming a player in soccer franchises. Victoria Road Football LLC, led partially by former U.S. and EPL goalie Tim Howard, has purchased Dingham and Redbridge FC. Directors of the club, David Bennett and Stephen Thompson, will retain their original holdings of the club, but it's just another entry for Victoria Road, who is also the primary owner of Memphis 901, an expansion team in the USL next season. And finally, a sad note from EPL's Watford. Harry the Hornet is officially besides himself as Gareth Evans has decided to stop portraying the mascot after 10 years in the role. No news yet on how the club will replace or rebrand the mascot. Today's worldwide headlines are brought to you by Public House Media Store Envy online shop. Best way to promote your soccer passport and any other PHM shows is with t-shirts, mugs, and more available in the Store Envy shop. Visit publichousemedia.storeenvy.com. That is STORENVY.com. Welcome back to Your Soccer Passport. I'm Bryce Burge, Yvonne Sanchez Carrasco 2. Follow us individually on Twitter at Yvonne Sanchez C90 and at that Bryce Burge, Bryce with an I. U.S. and Mexico faced off last Tuesday. U.S. won 1-0. However, the big discussion about it was not about the play. It was more about the tangle-up scenario between Matt Miazga and Diego Lainez. Those guys got into a kerfuffle, a scrum, if you will. And then right afterwards, there was a red card with Zaldivar, and Mexico was playing with 10 men. It led to the United States goal before they won 1-0. Yvonne, with all the stuff going on, I got to ask you about the short jokes. What did you think of that situation?
I'm 6'2" and my girlfriend's 5'2", so I'm not allowed to make short jokes because then I don't have a girlfriend, so I can't really make jokes like that. So I don't support Matt Miazga in that regard. But I think one of the good things about this, because from the situation, was that there was some fire in this friendly. There's something we talked about last week, that there's something that might have been missing because there's a lot of young players in this game. But the fact that luckily you had Matt Miazga, who was playing the wrestling bad guy, against this young talented player like Diego Lainez, set up nicely for games later on between U.S. and Mexico, especially when you look at the Gold Cup coming up next year and moving on forward. That image has been shown around the world now of Miazga kind of looking down at Lainez. So I think it sets up nicely for a new added fire in the rivalry, that where people were wondering where this fire would come from, especially now with Rafa Marquez out and all these other guys. And
it's just amazing because, I'm 6'1". I'm also on that, the taller side of average, in terms of height, but you're 6'2" to 5'2" is pretty close to the difference in height between Miazga and Lainez. Lainez is 5'5", Miazga is 6'4", and just the squat, him like with his arm out and then like squatting down to be on eye level with him has gone around the world in a way that I think is very important, because when we talked on the show, it talked about the importance of the rivalry and all this other stuff, but it's post-World Cup. You've got young players. Both teams don't have managers. They've got interim managers in right now. You didn't know what to expect. This was also going to be in Nashville, which was going to be a good test for what was known as the Music City before they have the possibility of hosting a World Cup game now. Now that bid between U.S., Mexico, and Canada was accepted. That's a huge thing. Because Nashville wasn't known as a sports city until they got the Predators, until they got the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee didn't even have any major sports franchises besides some AAA baseball teams. So, you weren't sure what you were going to get. And now we got some fire. Miazga is a player that has known to be a troll on the pitch in different roles. Not like the evil kind of bad guy. He's not biting people. There's no racial slurs. There's nothing along those lines where you attack his character. But instead you've got, like I grew up a White Sox fan, so I loved having AJ Pierzynski around because he was always pulling stuff like that as a catcher. And he was a player that you loved to have and love to hate him, or you hate that you loved him because of what he did on the field. And I think Miazga can do this for the United States, which is important in branding American soccer. In the women's game, it's so much easier. Americans are one of the top countries in the world. The NWSL is one of the top leagues in the world. So American styles of soccer can come up more prevalently, but it's harder in the men's game to bring that equality and American style, because you don't see Americans around the world as often as you do on the women's side. But now you got Miazga doing this, and you can root for him. You can see different aspects of it. You can see this arrogance. And Mexico responded so strongly of coming and protecting this good player for him. And that's that hockey indoor lacrosse aspect where you're protecting a guy like Sidney Crosby or John Tavares or something like that before a big fight happens. It's amazing to see what all the different aspects. Despite the outcome of the game, this was a win for soccer. This was a win for North American soccer. This was a win for both sides.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the smartest thing he did was do that, because he was average at best. He wasn't great. He wasn't bad, but he was, he's kind of average, kind of the way he's kind of been for the most part since he left New York Red Bulls. And then on the other hand, he did that to Diego Lainez, who was the best player that game, and was kind of like the little next great hope of Mexican soccer. So it's this perfect combination of layers for future games too. And you're right, it was a good win all around, because this is a win that I think U.S. needed more than Mexico, because U.S. coming off not making the World Cup. They've been trying to play these younger guys and get them more minutes. For Mexico, this is their first post-World Cup week together. So they established a lot of young players. They didn't bring back a lot of guys that were at the World Cup. So now, and there was a lot of good play too from both teams. You saw some good and you saw some bad from both teams over the two games, and especially in this game. I think there was a lot to take out of, especially if you're Mexico, a lot of young guys that you were happy how they played. And I think the next step is now let's find a coach. Let's figure out which guys from the last World Cup we're going to weed out, whether it's like the Giovanni Dos Santoses of the world, which ones need to take a more prevalent role, like Irving Lozano and Raul Jimenez, who were starters, fringe players, but then now have to take that leadership role, that next step of where we are, the 2, 3, 4 best players on the team. That's important. And then you have to incorporate players like Hector Herrera, who've been through 2 World Cups now, and now they're the leader. They're the cream of the crop. They're the ones who's number 1 on the sheet every time now. So now it's a reshuffling of the order of this next cycle for Mexico, and now U.S. also has to figure out something similar, but theirs is a little more up in the air, I think, because now you have people like Bradley and Altidore, like, do you want to bring him back? Do you not want to bring him back? I think theirs a little more, the deck is a little more spread out and a little more wild cardish. Pulisic is going to be the center, but from there, where do you build around? I think Mexico, there's a little more hierarchy and there's a little more depth, and the charts are a little more pyramid style, where USA, it's a little more Pulisic, and then from there, it's a little wider.
Yeah, that's true, especially for Tyler Adams. He scored his first international goal in that game, so that's kind of a big one too, about whether or not you're going to have a Pulisic that can be out wide and get at somebody, how Zardes did. I think Zardes did fairly well, and he's gone through a good growth in Columbus with all the growth that he's had lately. And so it is interesting to see where both these teams can go. But that is it for us this week. Lots of games to pay attention to: Champions League, EPL, MLS, and of course, pay attention on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, for our views on the NWSL Championship game. That will be sometime Wednesday or Thursday when we will put those up. In the meantime, remember to subscribe to Your Soccer Passport on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever your favorite podcasts are found. I'm Bryce Burge.
I'm Ivan Sanchez Carrasco. Big or small, we love you here. Tall, short, we love you all.
You've just listened to Your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media.